This, obviously, is Outkick the coverage. We're still talking to Joel Klatt, still continuing to roll through with him. Let's continue that conversation with Joel now. So what you said, I think, is so true. Suddenly, when college football was challenged and people started to say, oh, my God, the Big Ten's going to cancel, the Pac-12 is going to cancel, the entire season may go down the tubes, it was like everybody out there suddenly felt like, hey, we've got to stand up and fight for the season. And you saying you were hearing from people behind the scenes when you stepped into the fray and said, hey, here's why I think college football needs to happen. That's what we finally started to see happen in public, right? Where I think a lot of people were surprised how many coaches, athletic directors, players were 100 billion% committed to finding a way to play, whether it's Justin Fields at Ohio State, who may not get to play, unfortunately, but I credit him for fighting as hard as he could. Trevor Lawrence at Clemson, who I think's voice came out at a time that we want to play. I'm not sure without social media, honestly, that everything would have ended up the way it did, and players and coaches finally found their voice. And I think that's the reason we're going to have a season of any type at all.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think what happened was there was such a spotlight put on the what I would call the anecdotal pieces about the players opting out or saying that they don't feel safe. When I knew from the communication I had with both players, coaches, training staffs around the country, that the majority of players did feel comfortable and indeed more safe within football than without. So, there was so much attention paid to this player's opting out and this player's opting out and this player says he doesn't feel safe. And then there was that Pac-12 group that came out and, said a lot of different things, part of it being about coronavirus, part of it being financial. And I think it was very apparent, and social media was absolutely the driver, because for the first time, the rest of the players didn't have to have a media outlet to have a blowhorn. Trevor Lawrence is more powerful than any college football media person in the business, right? And so, he sent out a couple of tweets, and then Justin Fields, and then you just see this outpouring of emotion from the guys that wanted to play. And I do think it was really powerful. And not only powerful, I think it absolutely shocked what I would call kind of the how do I say this diplomatically? The establishment.
Yeah, like what I've been calling the Coronabros in the sports media. Like, I don't think that they really.
I was doing my best to not use that term.
Yeah. But I'll say it for you. The Coronabros did not. They didn't understand. Yes.
And we've seen a very different tune to some coverage around college football because of it. Because I think they were shocked by this kind of wave of, I don't know if you want to call it pushback, but of people saying, hey, listen, you may be reading about that one player, but that's not how I feel. So I think it was really remarkable. I thought that Sunday, I can't remember how many was it, 3 Sundays ago or whatever it was. It was just like college football shifted, and all of a sudden it was like gone were the anecdotal stories of fear and in were the conversations about what was actually happening on campuses.
Yeah, I think it was a great rising up of the silent majority to that point of college football players that have been training, working to be able to play, and then suddenly they realized, wait, this is going to be taken away from us, and we need to have our voices, lend our voices, and at least make it clear that the vast majority of us do, in fact, want to play. All right, talking to Joel Klatt, appreciate him giving us the time this morning, at Joel Klatt on Twitter. 2 final questions for you. Not to do with college football. First of all, are you aware that Zach Morris now has a podcast where he watches old Saved by the Bell episodes and comments on them he has never, he says, gone back and watched all of Saved by the Bell since he was in the show. And if you're aware of that, how many times have you listened to each episode?
I'm not aware of it. I am almost giddy. It's not quite to the point of Austin P. Central Arkansas, but it's close. I can't wait to go and listen to one of those episodes. I actually met him, Mark Paul Gosselaar, over at a resort near our house. We met some friends of ours at the resort pool, and he was sitting there, and I was like, well, absolutely, I'm going to be that guy. And I just was like, hey,
was
dude,
this recently?
By the way, it was last summer, and I was that guy legitimately.
Did he have any clue who you were at all?
He did, actually, and so we ended up having a long conversation about.
Is he a
sports?
He's a college football fan, so that's great.
Yes.
Oh, so wait, I didn't know this. So you had a long conversation with Mark Paul Gosselaar, aka Zach Morris, and were you just like, oh my God, like the whole time the conversation was going on?
The whole time I'm thinking to myself, like, am I going to ask him about Nedick's dirt bike? There was so many things I wanted to ask him that I didn't ask him because I was already that guy that walked up and was like, hey, bro, by the way, big fan, and then I was like, oh gosh, I'm that guy.
How did you make this is interesting. So I also have met Mark Paul Gosselaar, and I think I told you about my story, but I'm going to tell people again that story. Hold on a second. But first, I want to go back to you. Like, you and I have some measure. Like, we're like F-list celebrities, I would say. Like, we're pretty far down on the celebrity list. but like, it makes you feel a little bit more justified, to, at least in my mind. If you talk to somebody famous and you're a little bit famous, it feels like you're more, like, that's how I psyched myself up when I talked to him. But my question for you is, how did he become aware of who you were and what you did in the course of that conversation? Like, how did you drop it in? Like, oh, by the way, Ohio State, Michigan, ever hear of it? I call it every year.
That's a great question.
There's a little game called Ohio State, Michigan. How about Texas and Oklahoma? You ever hear of it? Red River Rivalry? I'm Joel Klatt. I call it. Hey, nice to meet you. Like, so how do you slide it in?
Is your TV on Saturdays? Yeah, I'm the voice on the TV. Okay, so my buddy who I went to visit, he had been sitting next to him, right? So their families ended up just sitting next to each other. When we joined, like, he was like, hey, that's Mark Paul. We've been chatting a little bit. So that's when I was like, oh, hey. So I was kind of introduced. And then I was like, oh, hey, man, by the way, I'm a huge fan. And then my buddy said, yeah, Joel works for Fox. He calls college football. And he's like, oh, yeah, you do you work with Gus Johnson. And I'm like, yes. So that's how it happened. So thankfully, I didn't have to broach the subject on my
So you got a hype man. So here, see, I couldn't do that. So I think I told you this story. I don't know if I've told this story on the radio before or not. So when we were calling college football games, we did the last year that I was in L.A. doing weekly games, not calling, but doing like the Friday pregame show. It was me, it was Matt Leinart, Stuart Mandel, Bruce Feldman, Lindsey Theory, George Reister, right? That was basically our crew that we would do breakdown games, everything else. We had an awesome time. I still feel, if anybody out there is listening that has the ability to make television shows happen, I still feel like Friday night college football preview, there's a huge demand for a show like that, right? People are ready for the games. They want to have a beer. They want to kick back. They're already in their town. Like, that was such a fun show to do. So anyway, we do it Friday night in L.A. So one night we finish, and Leinart's like, hey, or it was a Saturday night. He was like, hey, tomorrow, do you want to go to a Halloween party with me? And I was like, I was out there, no kids, like no obligations. I'm like, and he's like, oh, and it's because he knew I would be impressed because we had talked about it before. He's like, oh, it's Nick Lachey's Halloween party, right? So for people out there,
because Nick are tight.
Yeah, they're buddies. So and I'd met Lachey once before watching games. He's a huge sports fan, and he was like, it should be awesome. Like, I was like, yes. So I have to go get a costume. We go to the party, and the theme of the party is dead celebrities, okay? So you're supposed to dress like a dead celebrity. And so Nick Lachey's got an awesome place. I think he's married to like Vanessa DeMillo or whatever her name is. Awesome party, incredible time, like where everybody's having a great time. And there are a few celebrities there. And, you know, by and large, like I'm trying that. By the way, what do you think Leinart went dressed as?
Oh gosh, I have no idea.
So he totally blew the entire thing. No, he went as Batman. So I'm like, well, Batman's like not dead. He's not like, I mean, come on, just
never
at least
dead.
Never dead. Like at least, make an effort to be dressed normally. I went as dead George Washington. Like, so I had to go find a costume on Melrose. So we run in, Scott Riddell and me. Scott Riddell is a producer on many of the Fox shows. He's an awesome dude. And we're like walking through the aisles, like, okay, what can we be? So I was, like a George Washington costume, dead celebrity. I was George Washington. It's fine. So as we're like walking through the room, Mark Paul Gosselaar passes me. And I swear to God, my heart like skipped a beat. I was like, oh my God, it's Zach Morris. Right? But so I went over to Leinart and I'm like, dude, that's Zach Morris. I was like, he was like, yeah, he's buddies. I was like, oh my God, this is like unbelievable. I was like, should I talk to him? He's like, well, you got to play it cool. Like you're in, like LA now. You can't just go up to somebody and be like, you can, but it's like kind of like people just want to have normal party, right? Like they don't want to be like have, some crazy fan. Like, so I'm like trying to think of all the things that I can say to Mark Paul Gosselaar. And then I'm like, well, I need somebody to like say that I'm on TV. So then it's like, it's like you had your buddy there. And I'm trying to think about ways that I can have like Riddell or Leinart, like, because Leinart got a Heisman Trophy. Everybody knows Matt Leinart. But like, I need him to be like, oh, this is my buddy Clay. He's on TV too. So then I'm like on some level where I can have a normal conversation with Mark Paul Gosselaar, and he can be like, oh, you're not just a crazy fan. Like you've actually accomplished something in your life other than watching me on Saved by the Bell for 20 years, right? So I'm like trying to think about all these different ways to scheme. Well, the night progresses and like I can't ever find myself in a situation where I'm like able to talk to Mark Paul Gosselaar, and then finally like he's by himself like getting a beer, and like there's nobody else with me, and I run over to him. First of all, Mark Paul Gosselaar, Zach Morris, dead celebrity, his costume, Bruce Jenner, and I swear to God. Greatest costume ever. So I also wanted to get a picture with Mark Paul Gosselaar, but I'm like,
no, he didn't. No,
yes,
he did not.
Yes. And so I'm like, but I was like, I can't ask for a picture. I can't selfie it and everything else. So I just ended up going up to him and and I swear to God, I said, hi. This is probably like 4 years ago. So not that I might be F-list celebrity now. I was like H-list celebrity then, right? Like if I've moved up a little bit on the flowchart of celebrity, so 4 years ago, I swear to God, I went up to him and I was like, hey, I'm Clay Travis. I'm Matt Leinart's buddy. We do television together at Fox. He had no clue who I was, but I had to go in.
You
I opened
hit him between the eyes with
I just went straight with it. Like I tried to, because I wanted him to feel like I could talk to him and I wasn't being creepy. So I dropped the Leinart line and I dropped the we worked together at Fox, and like we didn't have that good of a conversation. I needed what you had, the third party. I needed the third party to validate me.
Yeah, you definitely needed a third party validation. There's no doubt. It certainly helped.
I tried to hype myself up.
Validation. I don't even know if I would have said hello.
That's right, because then you would have been the guy who's like the super fan, and like at a Hollywood party. It's like I'm not a Hollywood party guy. It's not like I walk around Hollywood parties all the time. But you're not supposed to be like impressed that somebody else is famous, right?
Oh man,
you're supposed to play it super cool.
That's one of those celebrities, though, right? Like when you see Zach Morris, it's just like, oh. Like, you got to be, like, that's just.
Well, in fact, tying this in, Mario Lopez follows me on Twitter, and the first thing I did when Mario Lopez started following me on Twitter, aside from nearly break the phone on my screen to follow him back, was take a screenshot of Mario Lopez following me and text it to you to be like, hey,
Yes.
look at what happened to me today. Do you remember that when I texted you Mario Lopez was following me?
I do. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. And by the way, that's one of the only the first time in my life where I was like, well done, Clay.
All right, final thing. So movie theaters have opened back up here. And, for a long time, you ridiculed me for being a Star Wars fan. And then
That's
you
right.
had sons who got old enough to watch Star Wars. And so have you guys caught up on all the movies yet?
Yes, we have.
And are you now ready to admit that your ridicule of me and others who had watched Star Wars was totally without merit?
Yes, I am totally willing to admit that. I will admit, though, that the Star Wars movies are some of the only movies that I'll fall asleep to. I don't know why. I have no idea why, but I fall asleep during Star Wars movies. And I will text you a picture because I've gone so – this is what we do for our kids, right? Like I've gone so overboard with Star Wars. I was Chewie at Halloween. Let's just bring this all
That's
back
right.
to Halloween.
Yes.
Last year at Halloween, as a family, we went as Star Wars, and I was Chewie. So, all these stories, I can't even imagine all the eyes rolling right now in cars across America, and they're like, are these grown men talking about their Halloween costumes? Unbelievable.
So on top of that, the point on the Star Wars was they've opened up movie theaters and they're bringing back classic films. So I got to take my boys to go watch The Empire Strikes Back in a movie theater.
In a movie theater?
Oh, yeah. Like a modern day movie theater, like normal, like it was amazing. And to get to see it like on the big screen again was pretty unbelievable. My boys were just blown away by it. We also went and saw Ghostbusters on the big movie screen. They've been showing class because there's not enough new movies back. So we went and watched Ghostbusters last week, which is just, it's unbelievable. Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic.
Needless to say, here in California, our movie theaters are not open.
Yeah. Well, hopefully at some point they will open again because I'm going to see Tenet
I would love for them to
with
show
my
us
wife
movies.
this week.
I would love to do that.
Yeah.
If there was one movie, I would love you, people out there, throw this out back at us. If there was one movie you could re-see in a theater, the theater setting, which one would it be?
So two of them that I just saw are high up on my list, which is why I bought those tickets: Empire Strikes Back and also the Ghostbusters. But I honestly believe this. I think the best movie that has maybe ever been made in terms of being able to appeal to everybody and being basically like a perfect movie, Back to the Future, is almost impossible to top. It is one of the greatest movies that is ever made. So I think that would be a great movie to go see. The original Back to the Future is as close to perfection. Like if you watch that movie, we watched it. Like the great thing about being, one of the many great things about being a dad is you can go back and watch a lot of the movies that you liked if you're around our age in the 80s, the early 90s, whatever it is. Karate Kid is up there, pretty awesome too. Like being able to show, like my 9-year-old thinks the 1980s are the greatest decade that ever existed because we watched Goonies and Karate Kid and Back to the Future.
Right.
And he's right. I mean, it is one of the greatest decades ever. But those movies are all pretty awesome.
And I'll go back to the 80s as well. My movie would be Top Gun.
Oh, so good. I had my boys watch Top Gun too. That also on the big screen with the do you think about the advantage of being able to see like the jet pilots and the surround sound and like that Top Gun is tough to beat. I can't wait for the Top Gun 2.
Yeah, I mean I can't either. I mean we'll see if it's good, but I can't wait.
We will do indeed see if it's good. All right, we got to get you on again. Maybe we'll get you set up for college football season because we used to talk to you when you would be going to all of the hotels for part of the season. So presuming that starts to happen, maybe we can get you on again for Fridays or something as you get ready for the season.
Yep, you bet. Can't wait, man.
Awesome.
Have a good one.
Will do. That's Joel Klatt. I'm Clay Travis, and we both got to meet Zach Morris. We'll have more with Outkick next on Fox Sports Radio.